On the Level podcast, your Masonic podcast. Join the hosts Billy McIntyre and Sam Earl Sedgey as they delve into the world of Freemasonry.
Welcome to On the Level podcast, a Masonic podcast about all things Masonry. I'm your host, Sam Earl Sedgey, and with me is the most illustrious Grand Master of Cryptic Masonry of the State of Illinois, Billy McIntyre. How you doing, Billy?
I'm great. How are you, Sam?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. I'm actually really giddy and excited because we've been talking about this for months, and this is our first episode of On the Level podcast where we're going to be discussing all aspects of Masonry and Freemasonry, and hopefully be able to, share within the global community the great fraternity that we are part of. So, do you want to go? Do you want to go through quickly of why we started this and what your vision is, and because this was all you really wanted to do something, and I'm just excited to be part of it.
Oh, it's a team effort, and we're going to have some fun with this. We're going to try to keep this kind of low key, and we're going to try to, be on the level. We're going to tell people what Masonry is about, the people that haven't joined, and the people that have. We're going to maybe open your eyes to some different bodies that you maybe haven't even thought about. And basically, we're just going to promote Masonry in general, not only in Illinois, but throughout the world.
That's right. So just to give people a bit of background, Billy is currently the illustrious Grand Master for the most illustrious Grand Master for the Council of Cryptic Masons of the State of Illinois, and I'm currently the Grand Chaplain. I've been the Grand Chaplain for 2 years of the illustrious Grand Chaplain of the Council of Cryptic Masons of the State of Illinois, and also this year the illustrious Grand Historian of the Council of Cryptic Masons of the State of Illinois. Me and Billy have been in Masonry for quite some time, doing all sorts of things. And the Cryptic Council is a part of the York Rite, which is a formation of the Craft Lodge. In America, they call them the Blue Lodges, the Royal Arch, the Cryptic Council, and the nightly degrees, the 3 degrees of the nightly degrees, which are the Red Cross, the Malta degree, and also Knights Templar degree, where you become a Knights Templar. So the York Rite has been in Freemasonry for a very long time. Some argue it's been there since the Knights Templars. We can get into that. Some argue that it was formed via the Regus manuscript was the first origins of the York Rite, which was discovered in the 1200s. The Regus manuscript, which is in the British Museum. It's kind of like a charter of how to, the rules of the bylaws of the Masons of York. And the Cryptic Council is a important part of the York Rite, with some of the most, amazing in terms of the degrees. It's got some of the most profound degrees in the York Rite, which kind of gives the background and backbone and delves deeper into the first 3 degrees, which is your entered apprentice degree, your fellowcraft degree, and your master mason degree, where you become a master mason. So, Billy, you're part of the Scottish Rite, I believe, and loads of other appending organisations,
Correct.
But most of all, we're master masons, and that's the most important rank that you can get, is being a master mason. Everything else is on the wayside. Everything else is just an honour and a privilege, to be honest.
Right. And correct. And basically, it's a privilege, but it's also gaining further light or knowledge for the non-Masons in Masonry. And the stuff that's been recorded through the years, all these degrees are old, really, really old. And they go back to the beginning of Masonry for the most part. Of course, the bodies were added different times, but these Mason all of these degrees are wonderful and brings so much more light to Masonry than we've ever thought we could have in just the Blue Lodge. If you want to continue your story, what happened to some of these characters you learn about in the degrees? Well, you're going to find out, especially in the York Rite, but also in the Scottish Rite. So we're hoping this podcast will open your eyes to some of that, and there'll be interviews with some important Masons throughout the states and other states that we visit, and also there'll be a lot of history. So if you like history, this is a podcast for you.
No, absolutely. So to give people an understanding, you got the three ancient degrees, the first three degrees, and then the York Rite branch is really kind of like the continuation of the ancient degrees up to the Knights Templars. Now, the Scottish Rite is something that was really formed in the late 1800s and became very prevalent, especially in America and other parts of the world. And it's more of a philosophy school, and it's more of like a university which tries to teach high moral, degrees which are encompassed with high ethics, high moralities, teaching us lessons of how to be a better man. But a lot of those degrees were created within the 17 and 1800s. But the really ancient degrees, and we'll go through the history and all that kind of stuff and with the facts, a lot of them, the York Rite, are a lot more older degrees. And there was a massive explosion in the 1700s of Freemasonry when the United Grand Lodge of England formed in 1717. But we have documentation from Ashland Museum that you can go to in England and other places of the 3 degrees at least being done, and sometimes the 4th degree being done, hundreds of years before the formation of United Grand Lodge of England, in actual verified copies of Masons' diaries, because back then a lot of people kept copies of their diaries which were written on a daily basis, and they would have 30 years worth of diaries or 40, depending on how long they lived, and they would give their daily personal accounts, and that was a big thing back then. Not many people keep a diary anymore, and that thing, it was relatively it wasn't an old thing. I mean, in the 80s, I knew a lot of my older peers, older men and women who used to keep diaries. Now it's a very rare thing. But yeah, so we have a lot of evidence, and there's a lot of actual documentation material that's very profound that will go over the show. But yeah, we both love history, and we wanted to create a space, an audio space, that basically not shines a light on Freemasonry, but also its profound effect it's had throughout the ages. We've had loads of things that we've been involved in as just men. A lot of great leaders have been Freemasons, and a lot more. And it's there've been some sad events where like in World War I keep remembering the story about one British lodge. There was like 250 active Freemasons in 1912, and when World War I broke out, all of them, being men, all signed up for the war. And in 1917, there was no members left. They all died. They got wiped out. And these are men who basically stood for their country, fought for their country, and died. And it was such an extinction level event, World War I, for Masonry, because a lot of the men stood for the king and country, stood for their families and stuff like that. And it was such a horrific event and such an internal psychic shock that Freemasons.
And Sam, I'm sorry. Don't forget, in Germany, Hitler, basically put open season on Masons and basically wiped them out of Germany, because it was a big stronghold there in Germany, if I'm correct.
No, you're spot on.
And so you got to think how many men, not only in Britain, because Britain really got hit hard, but Germany basically got wiped off the map as far as Masonry.
Oh, absolutely. So Freemasons Hall, which is in London, which is a beautiful building, that's actually a monument. They actually built that out of respect to the fallen dead brothers in World War I. And Germany, Hitler killed around approximately 250,000 Freemasons. that's a lot of men. That's a lot of good.
Yes, it is.
That's a lot of good men who were basically killed. And America, there was nearly an extinction level event in America because the Americans in World War II signed up to fight against Nazi Germany and the Axis allies, and it was such an internal shock of how many good men were lost. These are men, these are fathers, teachers, woodcutters, carpenters, sons of fathers, sons of mothers, nephews, and all that kind of uncles, who all went to war. And the casualty rating on the American side in World War II was 500,000, just about 500,000. And that was the biggest casualty numbers in the history of the United States until COVID. So only recently did we have a death toll that beat the death toll of the United States in terms of the amount of Americans dead. And it was such a shock that in Massachusetts there was a march of 30,000 Knights Templars, who are all Freemasons and Master Masons, but have gained the rank of Knights Templars. 30,000 in the late 40s, and 20,000 Master Masons. And there's a picture there that you can find in the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts, and you can find it online, of the march. And you see all these Knights Templars in their chapeaus and all that kind of stuff. It's just amazing that, but so many died, and so many sacrificed themselves for their country and the against fascism and against the Axis powers back then, that it did hit America really hard. And we came from an era where our lodges were full to where our lodges across Atlantics were both empty. Where there were like 60, 70, 80, 100 men turning up to lodge, now you've got 6, 7, or 5. I mean, that's all completely wiped out or non-existent. That's how bad the wars affected Freemasonry. And even then, the numbers were not as bad as they are today. And we can talk about that, in another episode, or we can deep dive of, why are there fewer numbers in Freemasonry than there were before. I always emblematically say we're kind of we go through cycles. We go through booms and we go through busts, like any cycle. And I think we are back where we were in the early pre-1700s, and we are rebuilding our lodges and rebuilding kind of like rebuilding a second temple of King Solomon. And it was kind of harder post World War II, because Joseph Goebbels, who was the master of propaganda, you could say the grand architect of evil propaganda, he forced a lot of Freemasonry around the world to go underground with all the conspiracy theories that he created, all this falsehoods and scaring people about Freemasonry. And the problem we have in Freemasonry is just part of our culture and our nobility, is we just keep our heads down. We keep working, doing good work, helping out the communities, helping out a lot of charities, and we don't really engage or counterpunch. We kind of like have that, pacifist, let them hit us, let them hurt us, but we're good men. Let's just continue the good work. Let's keep building. Let's keep helping our communities. Let's keep raising money for charity. And so we never really engaged and fought back. And that kind of, I think that kind of helped keep the fraternity continue. That kind of humility, that being humble, and just having that resounding grit, like a mountain being smashed by the waves and sea, but the fact that it's still standing, regardless of all the crazy stuff that people say about us. A lot of people say,
absolutely,
yeah. So sorry, I just go off on one when we talk about history, but this is what you're going to get from Under Level. So Billy, what drew you into Freemasonry?
My family hadn't been a big part of Freemasonry at my point. I've had some great uncles that were especially heavily involved in the Shriners. And, for those of you that don't know, I've heard multiple times, we don't know about Masons, but those Shriners are good people. Well, those Shriners have to be Master Masons or they wouldn't be Shriners. So that's what, that'll dispel that myth right there. But, I guess I didn't know about it because before this generation, part of the downfall that Sam didn't mention is we had a policy as Masons that we don't ask. You have to come to me to
That's right.
ask.
That's
I
right.
don't talk about my business at all. Well, that was fine, but we almost lost a whole generation of men because of that, because it was so secretive and because of the negative propaganda. People didn't know. All they heard was the bad. They didn't hear all the good. They didn't hear about the guys, raising money for the build a new church over here, or maybe raising money for the school because they don't have enough money to feed the kids. All that stuff happens, and it has since the beginning of time, but it wasn't widely spread. So what got me started was I knew I'm a history buff, and when I noticed that almost all the signers of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution was Master Masons, I thought, man, there's something in there I want to find out about. And when I got in, the only regret I've ever had about Masonry was I didn't join 20 years sooner. I was swinging shifts and going back from
That's
days to
right.
evenings, and I could not. I thought, well, I don't want to join something I can't participate in. I wish I would have. I wish even if I would have been every other month, because it's made me so much of a better man, better husband, better brother. And it's given me friends that I never thought I could have. I've had friends all my life, but they're not friends like you get in the Masons, because these guys will go to the bat for you. They will do anything for you because you're a brother.
That's right.
And
That's
that
right.
fraternity, the love of this fraternity is incredible. No one can know until they're in it.
No, absolutely. I mean, what's really interesting is how the United Grand Lodge of England, the Grand Lodge of Illinois, and other jurisdictions are kind of advertising on a very low key what Masonry is about. And the it doesn't really go through much, but it kind of like says if you want to be part of a high ethical fraternity that is looking to improve you as becoming a better man and meeting like-minded men, this is it. And then you go through all the degree works, and I think and I encourage that because I personally as well, I wish I joined very 20 25 years ago, and the reasons why I didn't were exactly because of the conspiracy theories that you would hear, and when the internet came, lots of things blew up, and there are a lot of things like, oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, if that actually happens, I don't want to be part of that. That sounds
Right.
gross. And to be honest, guys, all of that is just false. It's
Well, let
all
me say
false.
this: when I joined, because when people find out you're becoming a Mason, it was a big deal to me. And I was telling people, well, of course, for everybody that knows and says, "Oh, you'll never be sorry for that," there's always that one that says, "Oh," and then tells you all these horror stories. Well, it was so when I took my first degree, which is inter apprentice degree, you'll find out in Masonry, nothing starts out without a prayer. You got to pray before you start anything, because if you don't get the blessings of God, it's not going to go right for you. So I prayed, and they said, now's your time to pray. And I did. And I prayed, and I prayed, God, if there's something evil here, let me see it today, and I'll get away from it, and I'll never look back. Well, I've never seen anything evil in there.
No,
I've never seen
no.
anything but a very wonderful people. We don't speak of politics in the lodge. We don't speak of religion in the lodge. That's your business. You got to get right with your God.
There's no
And
goat.
that's your job. It isn't the
There's no
lodge's job. The
goats.
lodge is to make you a better person.
Yeah. There's no goat. There's no Baphomet. There's no crazy stuff. All the stuff that you hear is complete and utter rubbish. Absolute rubbish. And it's kind of sad, but that's what it is. So from two Masons, prominent Masons who have been around for quite some time now, you can tell you firsthand that all of that is utter nonsense. The first 3 degrees are beautiful degrees. Once you get more involved and understand them, and if you do become a Master Mason, and sometimes some people don't, the most important thing, if you're interested in joining Freemasonry, is you have to believe in a higher being. You have to believe.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you're like an atheist, this isn't for you,
And the
unfortunately.
reason for this is because you take an oath that you will treat your brothers right and you will do the right thing when it comes to the fraternity and yourself, your family, and your brothers and your country. And if you don't have something to swear on that you believe in, if you don't believe in God, how can we take your oath seriously?
That's right. That's right. And it's we'll go into a bit more of the history at a different episode. It's a very Judeo-Christian type of, like, for example, the York Rite is, the Christian order. In other jurisdictions, they say it's a military Christian order of Freemasonry, and that's because of its roots. It's not actually a military organization. It takes its roots from the ancient orders. A lot of soldiers and a lot of generals and a lot of military men back in the days, their kind of branch of Freemasonry was the York Rite, was the knightly degrees, was becoming a Knights Templar, and that was kind of like a home for them to continue a lot of their stuff in terms of just the degrees and the workflows and the drills and all that kind of stuff in Freemasonry amongst a lot of their military veterans, and that kind of progressed where now civilians, but mainly a lot of civilians, everyone can join the York Rite basically, and some jurisdictions joining certain bodies like the Royal Master and Select Master degrees of councils. Some of them, like invitationals, like in England, they're seen as very, very prestigious degrees. To get into the council is a very prestigious thing, and it is prestigious because the Cryptic Council, we're supposed to be the keeper of secrets. We're supposed to be the guardians of the sacred vault. I've written as a grand historian. If you go to the Cryptic Council of State of Illinois, there's a history section, which the idea is to give the candidates and people who get into degrees a backdrop of the history surrounding there are 2 degrees, but actually there are technically 4. You've got the Royal Master degree, the Select Master degree, the Super Excellent Master degree, and you've got the Thrice Illustrious Master degree. So actually really kind of like 4 that you'll experience at some point in your life if you join this illustrious body part of Freemasonry. And it is a profound part, because if it's done right.
And I'd like to say, as we continue on, because honestly, everything that's been said today, I really think it's a wonderful thing. But I want you to know, from me and Sam both, right now our hearts really heavily into the York Rite, and that's why you hear us talking about it more, because we're both officers in the Grand Line. But that's not what this podcast is completely about. We're going to be into the Scottish Rite. We're going to talk about the secret, the invitation only bodies, as much as we could talk about, and everything in Masonry, wherever we get. And as far as we go is up to you. If you guys keep listening to us, we plan on taking this show on the road and going to England, possibly trying to interview the Grand Master of England. I mean, that's just up to you. If you guys want to keep listening to us, hanging on, we'll take it as far as we can go.
Yeah, I mean, in this episode, you're going to have an interview from the Grand Master of the State of Illinois of the Craft Lodges, what we call the Blue Lodges. That was a really cool interview. You've got a lot of the illustrious Grand Masters of the Council of Indiana.
Sam, I was going to say your Grandmaster was Indiana. We'll get the Grandmaster of Illinois. We got him on the.
Did I say Illinois? Did I say Illinois again?
You did.
Sorry.
But that's okay. That's an ongoing theme. You'll see that when you get the interview.
We got the Grand. My apologies. I'm in Illinois, so I've got Illinois in my head. But we've got a recording from the Grand Master of Indiana, the state so the most worshipful Grand Master of the state of Indiana. We've got a recording from him, and he talks about Freemason. That was an epic interview. We've got an interview from the Grand Commander of the Knights Templars of Indiana, which is amazing. And we also got several interviews from the most illustrious Grand Master of the Cryptic Council and the incoming, who's now.
Yeah, my favorite. Oh, I'm sorry. My favorite is we had a roundtable interview with all of the grandmasters from the surrounding states, which I don't think's ever happened to my knowledge.
Yeah, that was awesome.
It's if you want to hear, and it was a brainstorming idea, how we could get ideas and how we could share them and make every one of our states better through the stuff that's worked for us.
Yep. And here's the thing, guys. You're currently listening to the most illustrious Grand Master of State of Illinois of Cryptic Council Masonry, which is Billy. So, and we're going to also get hopefully Danny Gaddis, who is the most excellent Grand High Priest. Hopefully we'll get the Grand Commander of the State of Illinois as well for the Knights Templars. So there's a lot that we're going to bring you of these, big heavyweights who have been in Freemasonry for a long time. And as we travel around the world together, me and Billy, going to England and other places, we're sure to get not only grand representatives of that jurisdiction, but also fellow Master Masons and fellow members of the York Rite and Scottish Rite. And there's just so much to talk about. Like, for example, you mentioned the Shriners, and people are like, well, who are the Shriners? Well, the Shriners was... So when the American Freemasonry exploded, it actually created a lot of independent orders and bodies in the 1800s and in 1900s. And the Shriners is very much an American thing. It was established in America, and it's a great organization that does a lot of help. And there are hospitals that help a lot of unfortunate kids. Forget Widow's Sons. Widow's Sons, which you are, I believe, the president of the Widow's Sons.
I'm back to the secretary. I served my term and I'm done with that for now. Too much going on. But yeah, Widow's Sons of our local chapter. And it's a motorcycle group that basically we just ride as brothers and we raise money for the charity we choose. They don't choose the charity for us. We are this month and this year, our local chapter is doing an honor flight, which what it does is it takes veterans that's been disabled and takes them to Washington, D.C. to see all of the monuments and stuff that's put up in their honor. And not only their honor, but the other fallen soldiers' memorials. So it's a big deal for these guys, and it pays for their plane ticket and their meal and tour of Washington, D.C.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And now, so the Widow's Sons became so popular in America, they actually exported it. And in England, we have Widow's Sons as well, but our charters come from America. So what's really cool is, a lot of cool things happen in different countries, and then, they become accepted. And, so for example, the United Grand Lodge of England has accepted that the Widow's Sons chapter, which is international now, is part of Masonry. So we're going to discuss about the structure of how these things work and how they all get together, and, who chartered what and who draws the rules and regulations from what period, and all roots from the United Grand Lodge of England, and
sure.
then jurisdictions are given by it. So there's a lot of things to discuss, and we just went through a lot of things, and we've unpacked it, a lot of cool stuff. But I don't know about you, Billy, but shall we go straight to the interviews and go right into...
Well, first thing I would like to say is very important, because I'll forget to tell you, just like I almost forgot to tell you this time. I don't know if they'll be up exactly the same time, but pretty close. I'm going to try to put some interview notes of who's there, so you can tell the players by the scorecard, on the Facebook page, which is On the Level, a Masonic podcast. And just look for it. You can find it. Or look for my name, and you can find it under one of my pages. But I think that we're going to try to put more information on there as well, and we'll expand from this. We're just seeing if people's interested in this, what we're working on right now. And let me tell you one quick story, and then I'll be done for this interview, and we'll go for the interviews. So I would like to say that I was talking to, and I go back to say, when you're a Mason, you find friends all over the world. Anywhere you go, you'll see someone wearing a ring. You'll see someone wearing a hat. And you talk to that man, and he's a brother, and you'll get to know this. Well, I got to know this gentleman from Ireland because my ancestors long ago were from Ireland. And I was interested because, if you talk to the Scottish people, they say that Freemasonry started in Scotland. The English people said it started in England. So I was talking to this guy, getting his perspective as somebody from the other side of the world. Where did this start? Thinking he would probably say Scotland. He said, didn't start in none of those places. It started right here in Ireland. Everybody knows that. Okay, I don't think it did, but I just thought it was funny that even the Irish are trying to claim it. So if you're listening to this from Ireland, I applaud you. I applaud that what you think is wonderful. So you take.
Oh mate, no. So there are between Ireland, Scotland, and England. there are a lot of claims of who's the most ancient and most older out of the three. And you know what? It's best we go to Ireland, Scotland, England and ask all three and challenge them, to be honest. But yeah, there's so much to unpack, and this is just the first episode. And well, without further ado, let's dig into the interviews from Indiana.
See you later, guys.
Okay, welcome back. I am really honoured and very excited. We're in Indiana, and I am with some eminent graces in the York Rite bodies. And why don't we go around and start introducing ourselves?
Well, I'd like to say first that Indiana's been so hospitable to us. We have talked to so many people already, and we still got a few more to talk to. But I mean, these guys are great. If you guys are ever visiting, go to one of their grand sessions, either York Rite or our Grand Lodge. They would love to have you, and you'll learn a whole lot.
Well
but
said.
anyway, I'm Billy McIntyre. I'm the most illustrious Grand Master of Illinois at this time, and then we're going to pass on around.
I'm Randy Darling. I'm the Right Eminent Grand Commander of Knights Templar of Indiana.
And I am Joe Villarreal. I am now the junior most excellent past Grand High Priest of Indiana. And a week ago from today, I was the Grand High Priest, so it's new.
And I'm Lawrence Williams, also known as Larry. And I'm the past Grand Commander, 2718, and I am just newly minted Grand Recorder.
Wow.
Awesome.
Thank you for your service.
I'm Gary Sheets. I am the present eminent Grand Prelate for the state of Illinois. One of the reasons why I love Indiana, I was born at Terre Haute, and I've been telling these Illinois boys, you got to go to Indiana. Y'all are making me look good. Thank you.
And I am Sir Samuel Sedgey. I am currently the Grand Historian for the illustrious Grand Body of the Cryptic Mason State of Illinois, and I'm also the illustrious Grand Chaplain
Absolutely,
of the
and
Cryptic Council.
we try to have fun, and so we're here to have fun, and we got a group of guys here that would love to talk to you about Masonry and Knights Templar.
So first thing is, how long have you been a Master Mason?
Okay,
So shall we start?
we'll just start right here.
I was raised a Master Mason in 2013.
2013. Well,
So you've been busy in your time.
I have. I belong to a lot of appended bodies, and I just went out last December as Worshipful Master of my Masonic Lodge for the second time.
Wow. Thank you,
I was
Randy.
Grand Commander and Worshipful Master at the same time.
So you're pretty much like me. We went right into Knights Templarism, I guess, pretty early, right? Is that how?
We did. I was actually raised Master Mason in December 2013, and in March of 2014, I became a York Rite member.
Well, fantastic. Well, it's great to have you, and we'll ask a few more questions when we go around here.
So Joe Villarreal, past Grand High Priest of Indiana. And I've been a Master Mason since 2010. And I'm in Northwest Indiana. I'm not far at all from Illinois, from the Illinois border, and I'm also a proud Royal Archmason of Illinois as well. So.
And would you like to tell them where? Because I know some of those guys.
Absolutely, I would. I'm proud to say where I am. Keystone 281 in Addison. So.
That's a crazy crew. I know some of them guys.
I think that's why I belong there. It's a crazy crew for sure.
This is Larry again. I've been a Master Mason since 2000, so I'm going into my 25th year in June.
Wow, congratulations. That's quite a feat. You know, 25, 50, 75, 100, right? That's
a lot.
Quite a feat.
So let's just start and go back around, and then Gary, we'll get back with you too. But what brought you into being in the Grand Line the way you have? I mean, what was so special that you thought you needed to be in charge of something like that?
I was not. This was not my goal. Trust me. I have not learned that one Masonic word. I think it starts with an N and ends with an O.
None of us would be here if we knew that word. So,
You know, whenever I was asked to do something, I said I will be more than happy to help out. And one thing led to another, and then I was asked to get into the Grand Line, and I said yes. So,
well, for the people listening, and especially the brothers, but maybe not, the biggest lie in Masonry, because there is one lie, and that's that you're only busy one night a month. Because I don't think I get one night off a month. I don't know about you guys in Indiana, but it's kind of a busy life.
before I became involved with Masonry, I was a volunteer firefighter. And we were busy all the time doing that, either drills, meetings, training.
Thank you for your service.
Or for answering calls. Between the internal politics of the fire department and external politics, this old dog said, time to step aside. I sat around the house for a while, and the wife says, you need to find something to do. So I petitioned the lodge, and as they say, the rest is history.
That's great. And it sounds like you kept up with the busy work.
I have, yes.
But what was it like being Right Eminent Grand Commander of the State of Indiana for the Knights Templars?
It was an honor. It was a pledge. I believe on one of your previous podcasts, you had people complaining about traveling. I live in Northwest Indiana. Everything is 2.5 hours or more from where I'm at. I dreaded getting in the car. But once I got to where I was going, it was like meeting with family. Even if I have not met the Sir Knight before, it's like meeting with family.
If you get there and you're not having fun, you're not doing it right.
Correct. And it's attitude.
My next question, I want to ask the same question to the current Right Eminent Grand Commander, and because to me, one of the most beautiful and profound degrees, not only historically, and we'll get to that to the podcast, was the Order of the Temple. By far, one of the most mind-blowing degrees and historical, and I really thought I was there, back when the Templars were there. What was that for you when you, as being, a pilgrim warrior and then becoming a Templar?
How do I say this? There's one point in the ceremony where there is a very profound effect, and if I had not experienced that personally, I would have been disappointed.
Absolutely.
I have talked to people who've gone through one-day classes, and they missed that opportunity. I would encourage everybody who's looking for their Order of the Temple to go to their local commandery and get it done individually.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me tell you something about mine without giving away any secrets. At one point, and this isn't a secret, you go into a special room and you got to write down some answers.
Yes.
Well, when they put me in the room, I was the first in line. Well, they didn't turn the light on, and they said it's very important that you write these answers down before you come out. And I'm looking, it is pitch black in there. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. So I was trying to scribble stuff down, and when the guy looked at it, he goes, is these your answers? And I said, let me see. I don't even know what I wrote. They graciously let me go do it again. Okay. With the lights this time.
But we have a candle in ours.
Yeah, we do. We're supposed to, but they didn't.
So I believe the question was, how did I get involved?
Right.
Yeah. So.
And your name, please. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, Joe Villarreal, past Grand High Priest of Indiana here. So actually, my story is a little unique. So I had come into the lodge, and I'd heard so much about the York Rite in general. So of course I petitioned my home York Rite, which is also the same York Rite as Right Eminent Larry here, who was just talking, and I got involved, and I learned about the philanthropy of the Grand Chapter of Indiana, which is Royal Arch Research Assistance, and my son, who was autistic. He had he's nonverbal, and he's had some issues with central auditory processing disorder. Well, come to find out that a lot of the therapies that he was getting, a lot of the help that we got, was funded by Royal Arch Research Assistance. So I said, I have to get involved. So I've never been a title seeker. I've never been somebody. It's always been service for me, and so I wanted to further that philanthropy. So I had inquired about, just helping out whatever I could, and so they ended up, putting me on the committee for Royal Arch Research Assistance, and then I became the executive director for Indiana for Royal Arch Research Assistance, and now I was traveling all over the state.
Wow.
And almost instantly, I said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, because again, this is service, okay, and service comes from the heart, and that's what was in my heart. My heart was full, and I said, I didn't care if I ever became Grand High Priest someday, but I wanted to be involved with the Grand Chapter in this amazing philanthropy. So the biggest thing was being able to meet all the companions and the brothers that I would have never met, and outside of our jurisdiction as well. And I have just, I mean, as every year has progressed, I've fallen more and more in love with the service. Now that I'm out as of a week ago, I have no plans on going anywhere. I mean, I just want to just continue to serve as much as I can.
And wouldn't you notice, and I would ask all three of you as you get your turn, it seems to me like the people that aren't seeking titles are the ones that move up faster than the ones, at least in Illinois, and I'm sure there's always the one that sneaks in there and you think, oh my gosh. You know, but for the most part, people that just end up serving the most, I'm not a ritualist. I wish I was. I used to. The younger I was, if I'd have got in like 20 years ago, I'd have been pretty good. But I like to tell other people, I work in a maximum security mental health facility, and I've been hit in the head a lot. So not only did it make me goofy, I can't remember anything either.
What's really interesting, what's really touching, and it's a massive tenet of Freemasonry is charity.
Yes.
And charity for not just our brethren and our brothers and our companions Sir Knights, but for the wider community. Mm-hmm. And Royal Arch being the first step in the York Rite, whether it's Royal Archmasonry in the USA or the UK, that's the first step. And once you've gone through those degrees, then you have access to the Order of the Temple degrees and other appending bodies. And every body has a particular charity that they focus on. And in Illinois, same thing, autism is basically the charity of the Royal Arch. And with autism on the rise, massive rise in the past 2 decades, it's just such a privilege to be part of a body that's focusing on, not only funding, but research in trying to find some sort of cure for this particular affliction that's happened to many of our children and kids. And we have close people on the Grand Line and brethren who have boys and girls who are autistic. So, where there is Freemasonry, there is charity, and we're usually the first in line to step in and help. And a lot of people don't understand how important charity is, not only in our ritual, in our tenets, and as Knights Templars as well. To also, I always see myself in the York Rite because, not only am I a Royal Arch Mason and a Cryptic Mason, but as a Knights Templar, the duties of protecting, back in the Templars used to protect the pilgrims, but they also would protect the poor as well, and they also would feed the sick and enabled. And so, and the Hospitallers will even do more. They actually built hospitals. They were technically, you could say, the first hospitals in medieval Europe. So we've been there for a long time doing this stuff and taking care of, and that was our jobs basically, because you either had the tyrants or the noble knights who cared, the Masonic warrior brethren. So that kind of touched me, the essence of why you got in, and everything else is just. It just happened basically because of the focus. Yeah. Because of the focus,
and then the fellowship followed that, and then just realizing, it was kind of like you said, most illustrious. I'm also a very social person, just like you, and I thought I had good friends before I was a Mason, and wow, I mean the level of friendship and brotherly love and these. We always talk about a mystic tie. It really is a mystic tie.
It is a mystic tie.
And to your point as well about always feeling home, no matter where you go. And I've always felt that, and I've always been blessed for that. And kind of one thing to just kind of touch upon real quick too, because we were talking about charity and being charitable and everything. The motto for my year was fulfilling the promise to the craft. And that's got special meanings within the Royal Arch and what we teach in the Royal Arch degree and everything. But my big thing when I would go see chapters and let them know is, who is the craft? The craft is not just the companions of the Royal Arch, or even the companions and Sir Knights of the York Rite, or even Master Mason Brothers. The craft is the community that we live in. And I think it's very important that we fulfill our promises to our community as well. And I think, so charity goes well beyond outside the bounds of just the actual charities that we're in charge of as a body, as a grand body. I think it's very important for us to get out into the communities and show the communities what we do, and that'll only bring membership in as well. But that's also what we're all charged as Masons.
And also dispel some of the negative stuff that's not even true.
Absolutely.
People have a misconceived idea of what the Masons are. If you get in it and see, I promise you, you will not find anything bad. I mean, we're all about giving, all about taking care of others, taking care of children. That's what we're about. So please, look into it if you're not a member.
Absolutely.
Ready, darling.
Okay, same question if you remember.
Well, I didn't start my Masonic journey until after my military career. I retired in 2013 from the military. I retired in September, did my first entered apprentice degree in October, fellowcraft in November, then raised to Master Mason in December.
Wow.
So then as I was out traveling the state, we practiced truth, relief, and brotherly love. And you feel that as being a Mason. I guess my calling was commandery, because once I saw that, I'm like, I asked the brother, I said, what is this? And how do I get there? He goes, I can help you. And since then, I have never looked back. Actually, I was past Grand Commander Williams' marshal his year as he was
It's all my fault.
his year as a Grand Commander, I became his marshal. He asked me to be his marshal.
Wow.
And then my journey continued. I wasn't looking for any titles. My motto is to serve, just as Jesus did.
Well said.
And
Well said.
served,
Amen.
the Templars of the state that, give up a lot and want to come together. Our charities, is the High Templar, Knight Templar Eye Foundation.
That's right.
So, in the Holy Land Pilgrimage, which sends pastors to the Holy Land free of charge so they could walk where Jesus walked.
And that's so important.
So, what's really interesting, and first of all, thank you for your service, for serving your country and protecting all of us, and your fellow brothers who served as well. My question is you must have geeked out as you left the service, and the Knights Templar is outside of America, we call it the Religious Military Order of Freemasonry, basically. So if you go to Canada or England, it's called the Religious Military Service of the Christian Order. It must have been like, there is kind of like, floor work that's kind of like similar. How was that as a veteran who served? And it's sometimes a transition from the military to becoming a civilian for a lot of us is kind of difficult. That transition. How did that help with you coming back into civilian life?
Well, because when I went back into civilian life, a lot of people are different. They think differently than what military guys do, no matter what branch you're in. Then once I started coming to the lodge and I started meeting with the brothers, one guy is a barber, one guy is a chef, one guy is a mechanic. Everybody was put on the level. Same way, pretty much same way the military is.
That's right.
Once you meet one military guy, you've kind of met them all. So they welcomed me with open arms. Then once I started getting into more of the Templar stuff, it was more in my realm of my military background.
And for the listeners that don't know, and there'll be lessons on it later, all Masonry come from the Templars. That's how it started. And there's different thoughts on that, but I believe it with all my heart. I think that the Templars ended up being Masons, and that's how our craft come to where it is today. So getting in the York Rite is very important when you're Masonry. If you're not in the York Rite, you're missing out on a whole different level of stuff.
What Billy's touching on, we did a 2-hour lecture, factual, it's all facts about how the orders and where it came from, and we won't go into it now because it's quite in depth. There will be historical podcasts coming that goes through just factual stuff. And having access to the Grand Lodge of England's library and other places, we found stuff that even sometimes the librarians weren't looking at it because they weren't. Sure. They were librarians, but they were not Masons, so they didn't have access to our world. So my question, starting from you, what did you want to achieve in your year, which is your year, and what was your goal, and what have been your highlights for this year?
Well, I wanted in the commandery to recognize the Sir Knights and let them know that the Grand Commander is here to serve them, not them serve us, and build a unity, which I got to build with the chapter, the council, and the Grand Lodge. I have a picture that we took, And our Grand Master, when he got his banquet, which has got me, the high priest, the illustrious master, and the most worshipful master, sitting on my mantle at home. I look at it every day, and we're all dressed in the bodies that we're in, and we wanted to do a thing of unity this year as we traveled around. So we actually I wore a white blazer with a black vest, and Joe here wore, a white jacket with his red vest, and Jim wore one with his purple. And we wanted to show everybody, and they still talk about it, about the unity, because we wanted to be known as one, not separate bodies, as one
That's
body.
huge.
Well, the Blue Lodge is actually part of the York Rite. I mean, it doesn't get enough credit for people that don't know, but it's one of our 4 bodies.
Well, we're a Mason first, before we're anything else. So, it made it a lot more special, I don't know for Joe, but for me, with the Grand Master being there and the heads of the 4 bodies, that meant a lot. And like I say, there's still individuals talking about it.
Well, something that we're going to go into in other podcasts when we get to the historical element, it's, the journey from the Entered Apprentice to Fellowcraft to Master Mason, the actual historical route pre-18th century was the York Rite. These are the historical degrees. This is the journey you'll take till you get, and then the council is the keeper of the secrets, basically the secret vault. And once you are able to appreciate the meaning and the rituals and dig the history, they all complement each other. They all really do. All the orders, and some people don't see some of the links. I can spend hours talking to you about, which I won't. Some questions I like, because every jurisdiction is a little bit different, and I really love your regalia. You have basically the chains, and you've got this fantastic Knight Templar medallion, and you have this really classy professional Knight Templar patch. What's behind that? I mean, and you also, so that's the grand line of Indiana, is that correct?
It's the Grand Commander collar for the Grand Line, yes. And on the front of it, it's got, the red Maltese cross, and it's got the diamonds on the tips of it, on the 8 points of it, as the sitting Grand Commander. Then we have other uniforms, like everybody else. Like we have a long frock coat that one commander in Indiana can wear. Then we have the standard uniform that looks just like a military uniform, but it's all black.
That's right, yeah.
Then we have the cap and mantle.
Yes, that's right.
Which looks more like old times.
That's right.
So every commander, it's up to them to decide in their bylaws what they want to wear.
No, stop me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but I believe there's an Indiana Sir Knight crew, a commandery, or a bunch of people who get dressed literally as medieval Knights Templars.
Yes.
And I missed it last time because I was out the country, and I was so upset because they came to Illinois to confer it. And these guys are really famous because they actually dress up and they actually put on all the armor, the chainmail, and they actually confer with like broadswords. And I'm like, oh my God, I gotta go there and see that.
They all dress in Templar regalia.
Yeah.
And they put on the orders the traditional way of the state of Indiana.
Okay, and so for people that are Knights Templar, no matter what state you're from, do you do that every year, or is that something you do every other year?
It depends. Like Illinois asked them to come, so they got a dispensation from the Grand Commander at the time to actually go over and do it. But yeah, they'll travel. There's a big group. We actually have a commandery in northwestern Indiana that actually asked for dispensation this year, so they can actually put on the regalia and actually do the degree for the candidates.
Oh, mate.
And it's one overwhelming.
I need to go. I need to be there.
Has that already happened this year?
It has. It was in Valparaiso. Yep.
And we're already starting a podcast too late.
Yep.
They will be starting their orders shortly.
Okay.
So they're just finishing up the council chapter work. I think they're finishing up their council work this month.
Yeah.
And they'll be starting their orders shortly.
Well, we'd love to be able to promote and maybe come, and so we could interview those guys, and
Have
anything.
pictures as well.
Yeah,
And,
and back to another thing. We was talking about the regalia, and that really works best if you're sitting here looking at it. But what I'm going to do is, if you go to our Facebook page, which is on the level of Masonic Podcast, we're going to have a picture of that, so you can just check right out and see what that looks like. So when we're talking and you don't know what we're talking about, just take a look on the Facebook page.
That's very well said. So, same question to you. What was really important in your year?
This is Larry again.
Yes.
And the year that I was Grand Commander, I was dealing mainly with leadership. I actually invited the Grand Encampment to come into Indiana, and we did the first level of the leadership program, 3 different weekends, 3 different areas of the state. I think we got like 60 people through.
Oh, wow.
So,
That's great.
I would like to see Grand Encampment bring back the leadership program back to the department meetings and get more people through it. Right now, I understand they're looking more at online as well as regional training.
And it was no cost.
And there's no cost.
Oh, wow.
We
Okay.
did it free.
That's
Well,
great.
at the department meetings.
Yeah, I did it free.
For them to come into Indiana, I had to pay the mileage and housing and meals for the instructor,
Sure.
which is it's cheap. I mean, that's reasonable.
Reasonable. No, absolutely.
This is Joe again with Grand Chapter. But so for my year, there were 2 things that I really wanted to accomplish. The first, and to me was the most important, was I wanted to start a ritualist recognition program. And the purpose for that was not to necessarily, recognize those that have been doing it for years and, might be have done big parts in the past. It was designed to get the new guys to get their feet wet. So what we did was we created this program, and we all know Masons. We all love our bling, and we especially love our lapel pins.
Yes, we do.
That's so
Yes,
true.
we do.
So we said, let's go ahead and take advantage of that. So what we did was we have 5 different levels now here in Indiana, which we just, like I said, started this year. And you get points. All you have to do is do it once, do it from memory, and have your secretary sign off on it, verify you did it, and then you'll get points. The most important thing about this is that you can get points for doing any part. So you won't get, depending on how big the part is, depends on how many points you get. So even for some non-speaking parts, if you're willing to get up off the sidelines and because you got those guys, they're scared to death to even if they got to learn 2-3 lines, but they want to get that first pin. And so the pins, the different levels for the first 3 were after the first 3 veils, the names of the first 3
Oh,
veils.
wow.
That's great. That's awesome.
And it's actually the actual banner of that veil. The 4th one is a pocket jewel that you get to wear, and it's called the Jewel of Judah. That would be considered kind of like the master ritualist once you get to all those points. And then the last thing is the one thing that you get as a Royal Archmason, you get that one promise at the very end on that golden. So you actually get that golden triangle with that promise on there, and then you become an ultimate ritualist. And so the other great thing about it is it's absolutely free of charge. I said I don't want anyone paying for this. The whole purpose is to get new guys involved, and maybe even some guys that have been around for a while, but maybe didn't, were afraid to participate. So, yeah.
Why I'd like to think that's so great, and I know in Illinois I have this problem all the time. We've had the same guys do ritual for 20 or 30 years, and honestly, a lot of the younger guys, they're either scared or sometimes, unfortunately, the older ritualist has shook their head at that new guy trying. He wasn't quite doing it up to his standards. I don't care how good he did it, wasn't quite as good as me. And that almost stymies people to the point they don't want to do it anymore. Right. This is a great idea what you're trying because you're getting new guys into it, and maybe that way the old guys don't feel like they're being shoved to the side. Absolutely. But the problem is when they're gone for any reason, whether they get sick or, God forbid, they pass away, you got a hole that you can't fill.
Absolutely. And the one thing, one of the coolest things about as I was coming out of the office one of the last things I did as Grand High Priest of Indiana was I got to go to Grant County chapter in Gas City, which is out not far from Kokomo, and I presented 11 pins to ritualists, and of those 11, almost all of them were brand new York Rite. So that brought a lot of joy to my heart, and that was a great thing to go out on.
So what would be really nice after we do this session is if you can pass the details. It'll be nice to see. This is what's really great about going to different jurisdictions and listening. And you guys in Indiana are very innovative in all different bodies. And if we can pick your brain, and I can go to the Grand High Priest in my jurisdiction, and or someone on the Grand Line, or even the Grand Council. Look at this thing. These guys have game theoried this, and it works basically. And it gets people to gives them small steps as the worshipful brother of.
Not to do a plug for our podcast, but if you hear this and you're involved with somebody in the Grand Line and say, hey, I've seen this idea sound like this guy from Missouri or this guy from Indiana had a great idea. Why aren't we doing that?
Why don't we implement that?
Anything to make masonry better. That's what we're doing.
These are things that sometimes, because we are so we isolate, we're like hermits sometimes in different jurisdictions, and we don't really kind of like be able to poke around and see what other people are doing. Having a session like this and learning a program like that may help other jurisdictions implement it and create their own different style. Because if you're having success, doesn't mean other places around the world can't have the same success.
This is Larry. Backing up a little bit, we're talking about learning ritual. Mm-hmm. I have seen York Rite bodies fail because of my part. No, it's not your part. It is a part that you do.
Well said.
But it is not your part.
And what you're saying is so correct. And what we've seen in Illinois, when COVID happened and some of these older guys got scared to come back to the council, our councils, a lot of them down south where I live in the southern part of Illinois, has really suffered because nobody knew those parts.
Right. And it's with that attitude of my part. When, like you say, when they're gone, there's nobody ready to step up to fill that part. We, fortunate in LaPorte, we have 2 people that can do the prelate's part for the Order of the Temple.
And that's a big one, too.
We have 2 people that can do the commander's part for the Order of the Temple.
It's huge. Well, even in my Blue Lodge, which I'm very, very blessed to be in Illinois, in Frank and Nicole, we have generations of ritualists, but ritualists who are able to say, you know what, I'll be here every Tuesday for practice, and you're going to be a good damn officer in this person's life. And they know it off by heart, so they want others to succeed. They want to do what they, and I think that's the motivation we should all have. Doesn't matter if you know all the ritual or if you know the different things. Your job now is to get them to the same level, because you put that effort in and you're bringing your brothers or your companions or your Sir Knights and you want them to do the same. So you have a commandery or asylum or priory or a council or a chapter full of brothers. So sometimes we're busy. Sometimes life happens and we've got to be somewhere else. And one thing that I've been talking about for a couple of years is, and I'm hoping that we can achieve this in the next few years, is that especially grand level officers, I realized very early on is that if you're on the state level as a Mason and you're doing state level work, how cool will it be if you can just totally focus on state level work and you've got a local crew can just build a local crew. So what we should have, and what we don't, and we're going to build it, is if you have a strong local team that's building great local brothers who eventually will become state level, those in the state level can function. But what happens a lot of times is usually the Grand Line guys are also the local guys, and also and that's a lot of burden. And that's a huge burden on our shoulders.
I am also the local recorder. Not only am I the grand recorder, I'm also the local recorder. And at our last stated meeting, we agreed that we were going to do Red Cross in full form.
Wow. Love
Larry,
it.
Would you take care of the cast?
Absolutely, because what else are you doing?
Yes, so I said yes. Then I got busy with the Grand Commandery coming up here shortly, and it completely fell off my radar.
How cool would it be if you have an apprentice? There you go. And that's what we're all discovering as you guys have come into Masonry, and we're looking at this. We're seeing how can we be not only more efficient, but how can we be more productive, and how can we give more incentives to get everyone to do stuff and see everyone rise the boat. Because then suddenly, let's just say we have this. Suddenly, all the past grand masters. Then we can actually focus, you guys, on actually focusing on committee work that needs 5 or 10 years work, as opposed to then just going back and going through the whole cycle again.
And for the Masons out there listening, what you need to realize is if you get somebody involved in Masonry, they'll come back every month to help you out. If you leave them sitting in the corner where they should be helping you, but they don't feel like they belong, they'll never come back, guys. You'll lose them.
Absolutely.
And I would suggest, too, that if your York Rite body has agreed that you need work on, do it. When I was with another commandery, Michigan City, which was where I was knighted, we always did Red Cross in short form. The year I was commander there, I said, we're doing Red Cross in full form. And one of the older guys says, okay, you're sovereign master. What am I going to say? I learned the part. Every year we did Red Cross, whether we had candidates or not. Whether Michigan City had candidates or not, we did it every year in January. Every year in January, we had an asylum full of neighboring commanderies bringing their candidates for their Order of Red Cross.
Obviously, you did a great job.
Well, thank you.
So what we did too is, so this year, when it's Randy, Grand Commander. So my winter meeting last year, I put out that, one-day classes have their time and their purpose, which is great. But what we failure to see is that we stopped doing our own work in-house. So we had multiple commanderies this year, like 4 commanderies that hasn't done degrees in a while. So I asked them, I said, hey, what do you need? And they told me what they needed personnel-wise. And we were able to go down there and do degrees in-house.
Wow.
And the look on their face when we got it done was remarkable. And it built their self-esteem to actually go out and try to recruit. I handed all new Sir Knights this year, a challenge coin to remember the year that they got knighted, and an ink pen. That way they can fill out for that next petition that they might bring in. And so far, my home commandery has actually grown. We are now doing all of our work
Wow,
in-house.
that is fantastic.
Orders, all degrees in-house, without any outside help.
And just
We have something very special then, because that's not normal.
And just letting people know, Malta and the Order Temple takes quite a few people to do the degree. Now, before we wrap up, because we're coming close to our time, you told me an old war story in how everywhere you go, you make sure you have ties, extra bits and pieces, and I think that's a bit of wisdom. That's a cool bit of wisdom that people can take on if people don't have bits and bobs. So do you want to talk about your bits and bobs in the back of the truck?
So, yeah, I travel around. I got a toter and I got extra white gloves. I got black ties, stuff like that. Because being a captain of a drill team, you never know what you're going to need. I got some black socks and stuff like that. So, matter of fact, at Joe's session, one of my guys reached out to me. He lives 3 hours. He lived 3 hours away. He reached out and said, "Hey, has anybody got an extra tie?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got one." So I was able to give it to him, and he was in uniform like everybody else. But I try to travel around with extra stuff. I have my sword in my vehicle. I have my chapeau in my vehicle. My Persian cap. My dress jacket, just in case they ever need a temple guard or anything like that. I can just go out to my truck and get it. That's right. And all the officers from Indiana carry their swords with them.
Okay, before we close up, and I'll let you guys say whatever you want. For not only is Gary Sheets in the Grand Council, which is one of my officers, he's also a prelate for the Grand Commandery of Illinois. And I'd like to see, what do you see in here that you would like to ask these guys, maybe to give you a little more wisdom that you can share in Illinois?
One of the things that, and maybe this is an idea that some of you ought to pick up on, I became a Mason in 77. I became a Scottish Rite the fall of that year. And then I had 3 guys showed up and said, you need to be a Christian Mason. Well, I was a Christian church preacher, and I had just become a Mason, and I didn't know what they were saying, but I said, guys, I think you misunderstand. I already am. They said, no, you don't understand. You're not. And I said, well, I'd already taken out a loan for my Scottish Rite degrees, and I was making $89 a week. I said, I can't afford anything else. I had a Knight Templar Cross of Honor guy. I had the Grand Organist of Illinois, and just a regular Knight Templar told me, show up at Danville, Illinois. It's paid for. And then in 1988, G. Robert Minton and the whole Grand Line showed up at my church one Sunday morning, and I was Illinois' first pilgrim minister. When they asked me to be Grand Prelate, I couldn't say no. That would have seemed ungrateful. But you know, there's guys out there that aren't ritualists, but they do have some means, and they could help somebody get started. That's why I'm where I'm at. That's not quite what you asked me to do, but I think it needs to be said.
That's great. And you never know, the guy you're reaching out to may be the next Grand Master of your state.
I never dreamed that I'd end up going up the Grand Line. I don't know what I'm going to say when they call me Grand Master. I don't know going to how to act. But again, I didn't learn that Masonic word, no. But I'm glad I didn't. Because York Rite's been good to me. Masonry's been good to me. The York Rite has been very good to me. And some of the rest of you need to discover that.
So before we close up, I'd just like to ask if each of you would tell me, what would you tell someone that was thinking about getting in Masonry? What would you give them, just a couple of words that says, yeah, I'd like to come in and be a part of that?
Don't hesitate. Go right away. Your previous guests were talking about their legacies. My grandfather was a Mason. My dad skipped that generation. When I mentioned the fact that I was becoming a Mason, he goes, yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. And he's right. As far as other people, I mean, it's a great fraternity. I cannot say enough about it.
Well, I'll say that I was the first that I know of Mason in my family, but my dad seen what I had, and I got to raise him. And when I was master of my lodge, and that's something that I'll remember until the day I die.
You know, as far as you being the first one from Illinois to go to the Holy Land, thank you, and I hope that you can pass that on also.
I am.
Yeah, that was a great story. I really enjoyed that a lot.
Your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, this is Joe, past Grand High Priest. So the one bit of advice I would give is very similar to what Larry just said, and that is don't hesitate, just do it, because while you think you may know what you're getting into, you have no idea. Okay, and I don't mean that to be negative, okay? I have learned and I have seen so many beautiful things. I've met so many beautiful people that I've never in a million years thought I'd ever meet. You know, my grandfather, who passed away in '97, he was my hero growing up, and I always wanted to be like him. I always wanted to be like him, and he was just an amazing man, and he was just so good at heart. He was one of those people that he never had to tell you he loved you. He just knew. I mean, it showed through his actions. And he had passed away in '97, and then on the day that I was raised a Master Mason, my mom and my aunt took a 2-hour drive from Huntley, Illinois, on out to my house, and they cooked for the entire lodge and everything that morning, not knowing a single person. And my mom came to me with tears in her eyes, and she goes, here's something you don't know, because your grandfather was really secretive about this. He was a Master Mason, and here is his apron. He actually wanted to pass it on, so we didn't, bury him in it. And here is his Masonic ring.
Oh,
and
wow.
At that moment, it clicked. The man I fell in love with was a Mason.
And for you brothers out there that or people that aren't Mason, I should say, you don't realize what you could get into with this. This is so good. Just what you're saying, it just means so much when you find out that someone was, and maybe you're the guy that can pass it on to your generation and start. It's so beautiful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Randy Darling. So I'm a first generation Mason. I was able to actually raise my son
Wow.
when he became a Mason. And the brotherly love and with these gentlemen here, you know, you'll meet friends that'll last forever. When I got out of the military, it felt like something was missing until I met these guys. So once I met these guys, you know, it all came back full circle. You know, we went to Utah last year, and you know, I still talk to the past Grand Commander out there. I talked to one of the past Grand Commanders in Virginia, Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky. So it's a brotherhood that just doesn't go away. It's always there. And if you're looking, you know, read some stuff on what the Templars done, and it will open up your eyes. And you know, our fraternity works the same way.
Well said. Well, gentlemen, thank you for being on the level. And it's been a great privilege. And for me as a historian, I'm always geeking out because this is history. And may I say, you know, you're making your ancestors and those before us very proud. Thank you. And as I said to every guest, would you like to come back on?
Certainly.
Yes.
100%, absolutely.
Yes.
Well, don't worry. Next sessions we'll be back, and we'll be saying, "Hey, come sit with us." And you know, gentlemen, I like to end it with saying Godspeed. You know, that says everything I can say to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to On the Level podcast, your Masonic podcast. When you are ready, duly and truly prepared, you can always knock on the door.